Welcome to the Vincier Project, an H-Hour production where we help people become more skilled, more competent, and more brave when they're facing the most difficult circumstances of their life. I hope you enjoy our podcast. All right, we're back. The Vincier Project in the middle of June. We made it. I got my journal entries everywhere from the beach event, and I'm trying to keep them organized. So I'm going to do my best to synthesize this stuff, right? Initially, when I kind of sketched some notes this past weekend, I'm like, hey, I want to talk about this. I want to talk about that. Talk about this, talk about that, talk about this, and come up with that laundry list of all these good topics that I think are relevant, and I think they're important, and I think people need to know kind of what the experience was or is, right? Because it's all relative back to the Vincier Project, and it's an HR either train and events thing, or it's an observation from counseling, or things that we're doing in some form or variation of our businesses. And, so the beach event went off on June 6th, and Brock and Mary did a great job, and I think it was a huge deal for Mary, right? Like, and trusting that somebody else is going to be able to take lead and deliver the content and the messaging and be consistent with what we do. And I'd say Brock did that, and all the participants that showed up and came and got what they needed, right? It's the barrier to entry is as low as we can make it, right? And I think when we did the first few, we were like, hey, how much of a beatdown does this thing need to be for people to find it valuable? And it's really, really not that. And probably the second or third one, maybe it was Secure the Beach, the third Secure the Beach, second one, it doesn't matter. Mary and I went back to our notes after immediately, and we're like, hey, like the right dose of this thing for some groups is going to need to be 3,000 deadlifts or whatever it is, right? And then for some other people, it's going to be walking on the beach at a steady state and then dealing with the trivia. And so this one I think was great. They used open-ended questions for the trivia, and then you had this thick textbook to go reference to get the data or information out of, and they kind of guide some of that. And I thought that was pretty brilliant, right? Because I wouldn't have used open-ended. I think it leaves a little subjective, but the questions are organized in a way that kind of helps sort through the information to find the answers. And I think that was really, really good. And I think that's what people like about that stuff. There's no other event that does that necessarily, right? Man, onesie twosie, I guess, right? But it does stuff like that. It's like, that just fits for like, hey, I'm thinking about getting back into some fitness stuff. Let me just go start walking. Hey, I want to be around some new people. And like I've shared, I'm open and honest about it. It's just a great way for Brooke and I to assess and evaluate, hey, does this person have the requisite patience and empathy and skills to organize people, share information, and express empathy, especially when they're sand in people's shoes, right? When people have sand in their shoes, man, it changes their personality, I find. Anyway, so yeah, Brock was great, right? So today's episode is going to be on the shorter side, right? 10, 15 minutes and quick check-in. And because I value everybody's time that listens to this, my friends and family especially, and my mom definitely listens to it. So that matters a lot. And I want to practice using your time the way that you use my time, right? Is just content, information, something to think about, or not, we're right in the trash. So yeah, the beach event, I was kind of starting to ramble on that a little bit, but the one thing I noted that is really important, I have two notes here about that. I kind of synthesized my 40 minutes of podcasting down to 10 minutes and said, these are the two most important things. And I have two different books. One is more of a leadership side book and kind of the world. And the other one's my personal journal, right? And so, during the beach event, Brock could shape it out. Hey, we're going to do this part. We're going to do it this way. Let's do a little warm up, start moving. But for his content, what he did is really good. He narrowed down the principles from the HR principles he thought were important. And, he took represent yourself authentically. Interpret that as you may, but I think that's exactly what it means. And then do the hard work, right? And I think that helps people kind of just accept there's like a paradigm in the room. If you're on the beach that day, if you're showing up, it's like, we're just going to do the hard work. And I think that's a remarkable thing, and it's a hard thing to do. But he started talking about the idea of tithes, right? And giving away 10% of your resources. And the note he made in that about like giving up effort, who are you giving your 10% for, what, who, it's helped people kind of guide the journaling practice and make meaning and purpose, but to capture some notes and thoughts about the morning. Beautiful sunrise, probably the best one we've ever had in since we've been doing this thing since 2020, right? Like it was the best one, which I thought was remarkable because we had two before that. I was like, I've never seen the earth that color. And like, it happened again on June 6th of all times. And like right as sunrise was coming up too, which I thought was symbolic of so many things on so many different levels. But he said, giving 10% is consistent with ties and it's a value set thing. And I agree. Mary and I, through the businesses we have, we give 10% every month, right? As a practice. And I can remember when it was like, man, we made $50 this month. We're gonna have to give 10% of that. It's $5. It would be funny because it was what we were doing. It's not funny anymore because the sums of money are, I do believe, help, right? And wherever they go and what they go do with it, I don't know, right? And we do it because it's the right thing to do. But the note that he offered, that was so powerful, and he kind of captured this and brought to good job. But this is capturing. This is like, hey, giving your first and your best 10%. So if it was crops, it was money, if it was resources, time, attention, labor, you're giving your first and your best. Man, I can't say that I've ever applied that logic. It just became like I got into the habit where it was like, I don't know, like look at the spreadsheet. Let's say 10% of that, right? That's what's going out the door, right? Like we have to do that. There's a moral obligation to continue doing that. Yet I can't say I've always given the first and the best 10% every time. It's got me thinking, and man, I just want to thank Brock for that. It was just great, man. It's got me really pondering. I was like, oh man, like I know the math is mathing, the action, the energy, the effort, the things that we're doing, trying to give our 10%, and then you're going around. And that's why he's been brought onto the team, is just taking the team to another level. He's like, yes, I agree. Let's give 10% from his lens. Let's give our first and our best 10%. Because that's what we'd owe to our neighbors and our spouses and our children, our parents, our ancestors, and our descendants, right? If you live long enough and you're fortunate enough and blessed enough to reproduce and have children, you're giving it for your descendants too, right? And your ancestors, the folks looking down in heaven, if you believe in that, or up from hell, depending on which side of the aisle they fell on. Right? It doesn't mean people can't cheer for you from hell. Like 100%, you could have been raised by Satan's little helper himself or herself. It's typically a her, in my opinion, but it doesn't matter, right? But Satan had love for you, right? And like cared for you in that storyline or narrative. And from hell, they're cheering for you to do well, right? Hopefully not to join them. Right? That's part of it too. But are we giving our first and best 10% as part of ties? I think that's powerful. And something leveled me up a little bit. And I've been thinking about it, and I'm gonna chew on it a little bit more. Yeah, it was good. So he didn't completely fail. I'm proud of him for that. He got like a 71, which is consistent. 71 out of 100, right? That's consistent with what he does in graduate school. So there was no magic light switch when he got on the beach. Like he was going to turn it on, all of a sudden become an A student. And that's just not how it works. So, but that means there's a long runway and a way to get better, right? So next year it's at 72%, right? And if it does it right long enough for the next 30 years, then, and maybe someday we'll co-sign it and be like, all right, dude, you got 100, man. Like, good for you. You're done, right? Like there's nothing more to give. So yeah, awesome. So awesome. But then there's the other side. The event starts going, right? And then they set you on this journey, and man, I had a little bit of fever going in the morning, and I was getting huffy and puffy. And my wife's like, maybe you shouldn't do this one. And I think if the group was all people or like 90% people I had done one with before or coach one, I might have passed because I think that's just the right thing to do. It would have been prudent. But I'm stupid. So I went and I did it, and I paid for it and got crushed. And yeah, it was bad. At one point, I'm sitting next to Brooke, and she's like, man, she doesn't look too good. She's probably got a fever. Like nobody else is sweating, and I'm like just soaked, and I'm a sweater. I definitely sweat like a lot. But yeah, like it was profuse sweating. And so, that sort of, so the event starts going, and we're going and get broken off, and then we get broken down into teams, and the trivia starts, and we're doing all the events, and we're lifting and carrying sandbags and walking, and we're talking, and we're figuring things out, and we give roles to everyone on the team. Uncle Jack did like 1,300 burpees. Dude, 64 years old, did 1,300 burpees, man. Like, so, and cause he's been around people that like, he's 20 years ahead on the racetrack than I am. And I'm like, man, like this dude, and in the time I've known him, for the 5-6 years I've known the guy, he went from 59 to now. And he's fitter now than he was at 59. Like 2 full grown adult children, like going through life, successful. The dude is fitter now at 64 years old. Like, come on. Like, come on, what more evidence do you need? The stuff that works, the things that we're doing. We're not selling anybody on it, right? And yeah, I'm just proud of this guy, man. I'm proud of him. Anyway, so I'm in there and I'm reading, I'm going through, and I see this quote come up from one of the guys that were on D-Day, and it was one of the British guys. And the quote is, in the planning process, they're getting ready to go do, and hey, there's a shaping operation and some catastrophes, and we got to figure out some other things, and who's the paratroopers jumping in, and we're going to take these beaches and whatever. And the British guy's statement in the planning process is, hey, do not argue the matter. The difficulties will argue for themselves. And I think that's so true for just life in general. And I feel like that was the that was the backside of the level up of what Vince got out of the program for what the event for doing it, right? Like you have to be open to the idea you don't know everything, right? And so I look at it through that lens all the time. I mean, because here's the deal: we've invited people to these events that do different things around the world, doing things. We invited somebody to our house one time to do the event, and then we wanted to donate to their foundation or organization through them and their capacity on behalf of them. They decline because they're the smartest people in the room and they know everything you know. But the problem is when you run into somebody like me, is I assume everybody knows something I don't know. Just a human collector of information, and I don't do anything with it. There's nothing to do with it. Just I feel like people have read things and I've experienced things, seen things, been places I haven't been, and their interpretation and experience of those things is going to be very different than mine. It's not a judgment, but it's the people that on the other end are like, hey, well, why would I go around it? Well, like, what are they going to teach me? Not teach me. There's nothing wrong with me, and that's not the point. There's nothing wrong with anybody for that matter. Not that all figured out, but like back to that quote, right? Do not argue the matter; the difficulties will argue for themselves, and then I made some other notes, right? And then I started like, hey, who's written about this and who else has used this and thought about this? I want to give credit to all the right people. And they're giving credit to like Winston Churchill for and all these other people. And maybe it was him, maybe it wasn't. I don't know. But I think what happens in that process is we don't want to get caught up in like debating or listing all the barriers or obstacles. And then most of them are already in our imagination. They're not even there, right? Like after we give consideration to the first two or three things that might happen, by the time you get to the fifth one, you're in that weird space of like, how much cognition, perception, and attention can you give to that in your execution phase? Like I can assure you, right, going to space is beyond the scope of Vince's understanding. But I can assure you that there's a lot of bad stuff that can happen when you try to go to space. But I would bet a sum of money that could hurt me, they've given consideration to the top 3 to 5 things that could possibly happen. Like, and that's where it stops. There's always going to be some unknowns in the process and the practice. And you think about those complications, right? That are going to come up along the way. They will naturally reveal themselves as problems to be solved at that point in time. Having a decent mental model or some sort of premise or practice to sort through and organize that stuff is I think what helps us adapt to circumstance and situation. I think that's what the training and event and the 4 hours on the beach reveals is like the problem sets are just going to evolve and look different as the morning goes on. Not everybody's going to lift the heavy sandbags, but not everybody's going to get the trivia right. And then I find that somewhere in that intersection of all of it, the score always balances out at the end through the individual portion and the team portion because the problems reveal themselves over time. And like that, who is going to adapt and figure it out on the fly matters a lot. For me, once I got to the team portion, my fitness, there was nothing left. There was like nothing left in the tank. The thing that favored me is like I'm really good at reading, right? So when they were giving us 10 to 15 pages to sort through to find these key things and put together some coherent response, I read really fast. So I'm able to peruse and scroll right through 10 pages in probably like a minute and a half and then be like, hey, this is exactly what it is. And the beautiful thing for me selfishly is that one of the people's Allie, who just came on to work with us, so she's a novice counselor, a novice social worker, a novice counselor. She's new to this, right? And then another one was a student. So they're getting the application of like, hey, who's Dr. Vince outside of the classroom? And I'm operating and functioning exactly how I do in the classroom. Right? Information management, time management all the time. So the time management part of it for me was a test is that I couldn't function. I'm physically hurting in the way that my burpees aren't very useful. I'm not able to do large sets of air squats. So it's like, all right, let me get 10. Let me get 5. Let me get 10. Let me get 5. Let me get 10. Just be a good teammate. Whereas under normal circumstances, maybe I'm doing 20s, 30s, some 50s, sets of 50s, sets of 100 maybe. I don't know. Right? Working through those things, right? So the difficulties will argue for themselves, right? And it's where those things will come up later on in the process. Getting started is the hardest part. And for the mere mortals and the folks that are on earth, right? If you dare to wonder and start imagining like what does a future world look like here, right? It's going to require you to give your best, first and best 10% all the time. I think there's a degree of intensity to that. Because somebody's going to do the first therapy session in space. Somebody's going to do the first podcast in space, right? We've already had live streams in space. Somebody's going to do the first of this in space, first of that in space. They are going to harvest power and redistribute it through outer space. That is what's about to happen here. And that is the most remarkable thing ever. So if you're not long on America and you're not long on space, right? And these exploratory travels and building out this frontier and harnessing all this energy to make it better, then it's probably going to be a really difficult world to operate and function going forward. Yeah, there's a lot of hard work to do, but it's going to be less hard than maybe it's ever been. Simultaneously more competitive than it's ever been. And it's fierce. And the haves and have-nots will expand. The world would love nothing more than for somebody like Elon Musk and those folks to have their imagination beat out of them and not dream and think about things like that. So I think for us, when we're watching this and learning about this and seeing what these folks are doing, beyond the complexities of what they do with the finance in terms of protecting how much they can steal and misappropriate and manipulate valuations and things like that, there is something noble and honest about trying to do incredibly difficult things and putting rockets in space. It's pretty cool. So if we're on Earth and we're thinking about this in a parallel process, what are we trying to do here? Why play it safe? Like, for what? Like, why play it safe? If you're thinking about doing something or taking a journey or an adventure, meeting somebody new, creating a new identity for yourself, changing your body, we're all battling against the same thing. We're all battling against time. That's it. It's just a battle against time. It's all inevitable one way or the other, but we're all just battling against time. And I think that's what this last event demonstrated for everybody that was willing to participate in it, right? Your 10%, if you give your first and your best 10%, you're setting yourself up for more favorable outcomes. And then for me, selfishly, the key takeaway is do not argue the matter. The difficulties will argue for themselves. And the obstacles and barriers are going to appear. You have to just get started, right? And so if that fundamental life change is what you're in the middle of creating, whether it's moving to a new location, starting a new relationship, man, figuring out the next phase of life, reach out to HR, right? And see if we can support you and serve you in that capacity. That is what we do. And I would say personally, I'm an example of that. Man. I definitely was homeless in this life, definitely strung out. I definitely didn't want to live at times. Not proud of that. You know, I'm empathetic to that stuff. I want to give people long runways, and I like to bet on people's best ideas. And I think that aligns with this past weekend. So my heart's full. It was really good. We got our first guest scheduled. That's going to be amazing here at the end of the month. We're right before July 4th, I think. We're going to get Mary on. 250 years of Los Estados Unidos, man, just punishing them. We're talking about all the good things. That might be an extended one, though. That might be a little bit longer. Might be like an hour. And we're going to talk. She doesn't want to do zombie apocalypse. She said, I'm not a clown. I'm not a child. I'm going to talk about war. She's like, I want to talk about that. I think people need to know that. We'll talk about some of the funny experiences we had post-service. That's where we want to go. Lean more on the funny ones, of like the people we've worked for, with, and around, and what it's been like navigating all that stuff. It's been super fun. But yeah, American Revolution, we're going to celebrate all that stuff. Got a bunch of stuff coming up, though, to talk about in a few weeks before that. So, but yeah, she's going to be the first guest. Outer space. Think about it. Space travel is happening. If you're lucky enough, you'll hear about, see, and watch the documentary when they shoot Vince up there with some rhesus monkeys, me strapped in with them, right? Because they're going to say, hey, it's like, hey, you can go for $1 million and fly with Muskie and Bezos and all them and go up, right? $1 million, hook you up. That's probably worth it. They're like, hey, 99% chance it's going to be all safe, good to go. But if you're on the budget, they're going to be like, hey, for 10 grand, we'll strap you in with the monkeys. Got a 50-50 shot. I think I'm going to do it. I'm open to it, right? Because here's the thing. You get up there, next thing you know, it's successful. And now it's you and your pet monkey in space doing a live stream, podcast, counseling, first counselor up there doing it. Yeah, I think that's all it's going to take. Me, Rhesus Monkeys, outer space. All right. Thanks. Beach Event was great. I wish you were there next time. Maybe not. Maybe so. I'm going to be there to the end. And I'm going to do all of them, as many as I can. All right. Enjoy the day.